welcome back to another episode of A Little More Light, where we aim to shine a bit more light on all types of topics. And I'm one of your hosts. My name's Dee.
I'm Kev.
And if you're joining us for the first time, if you're watching on YouTube, welcome, hello.
Hola.
And if you are listening on Apple Music or Spotify, we are or not Apple Music, Apple Podcasts.
Yeah, it's Apple Podcasts.
Yes, Apple Podcasts or Spotify. We are glad that we get to spend the next couple minutes with you, whatever you're doing, wherever you're at in life.
Look at you giving a proper formal introduction. I feel like we just start talking and then we don't really explain what A Little More Light's all about.
No, I was thinking about that on our drive home today because we were talking about filming a podcast, and I was like, you know what? We should actually really probably just say what our mission statement is a little more, which is to shine a little more.
A little bit more, because more is a good thing.
Always more is a good thing.
Always more.
Yeah. More, actually, is our word for the year for our marriage.
It is.
Yeah. So that was, we always like to set like a word for the year in January, which individually we have done that. And then now, since this is our first year married, we thought that we would pick one together. And our word was more.
I originally had it as my word, but then we
That's true.
evolved
evolved it. I kind of was adopted into that one.
It was good. So it's also my singular word.
Yes, and I guess we're like 9 months into the year. We're on the back half of 2024. Do you think, like, looking at these last 9 months, that we've experienced more? You think? Or...
I think so.
Yeah?
But before did you notice I'm wearing a new hat?
You are wearing... Oh, my goodness.
Yeah.
Yes, you are.
I have more hats. Another hat.
Yeah, go back to check us out on Instagram and go look at this funny reel I made of Kevin with all his hats.
Because that's my mission now. I think every podcast is to have
a different
hat, and the only way I can have different hats is if I have more hats.
So there's more for you.
There's more.
Great, I love that. Okay, but seriously, do you think that you've experienced more in these last 9 months?
I would say absolutely 100% yes.
Mm-hmm.
And a lot happened in the last year, and I think there's different areas where you could say we experienced more. We experienced more travel than we've ever done in the recent past together.
For sure. Yeah.
I think we've experienced more time together than we've ever experienced, which is good because we're married and that's what should happen.
That's important.
I think we've also experienced more growth, more joy, and we can get into all this, but I think at the heart of it, marriage has opened up doors for the two of us to walk in and through together that doors were not open prior.
So true.
When we were single.
So true. Well, the whole idea in the Bible that marriage is like two become one, and we've definitely got to experience a lot of new things together, and more of things that I think we are surprised about, but also things that just make sense for us. So I
would agree.
That's
so. What is
cool.
this? What are we talking about today?
Well, let's just dive in and let's talk about, because we've just been married over a year, right? So that's pretty crazy. What is something that you loved about this last year?
So this podcast is all about,
besides spending more time.
Podcast is all about things we've learned.
Yes, that's true.
Okay. Sorry, what was the question?
What have
so guys, I'm sorry. This over the last month, what we've experienced is Kevin has forgotten a lot more things. But I go into these things of like, I asked Danielle a question, and then I almost answer the question mid-question, and then I question why I asked the question in the first place.
Yes.
It's like a matrix.
You do. Yeah.
But anyway, I feel like it's been happening a lot more, but I legitimately forgot what the question was this time.
So you want me to repeat my question?
Yes, and I won't answer the question during the question.
All right. So my question is what is something that you really enjoyed in this last year?
What is something I really enjoyed this last year?
Yes.
It's like the spelling bee, where they gotta answer.
Yep. Are you just trying to like?
No, I'm not trying to stall
delay
and try to find the perfect answer, because there are no perfect answers, because we aren't perfect and we're not made perfect.
Very good.
So maybe that's my answer. You know what? I really enjoyed being imperfect with you this year.
That's awesome.
Because it was honestly, you don't know what marriage is all about. You could read all the books, and guys, we're not when we were talking about this podcast episode, I also told Danielle, I'm like, you know what? I will talk about our first year of marriage. I will talk about our experiences, but I'm not about to sit here and say we have all the advice and the wisdom because, ladies and gentlemen, if you just heard what we said, we are 1 year into our marriage.
Yes, we're
one
learning.
singular year, 365 days plus about 20. So we are learning. And that's what I loved about this year is that it was imperfect, but that's what made it perfect.
Nice.
And
That's
what
awesome.
I mean by that is to elaborate even more is I think I really enjoyed the moments where there was uncomfortableness between us or moments that we hadn't experienced yet before and having to work through those together to find the best solution for the both of us. And
Nice.
so whether that was times where you and I got frustrated with one another or times where one person maybe came up short and the other person had to give grace, I really enjoyed us navigating those moments because that's where you grow the most in marriage, and it's in the trenches, and it's in those areas where you understand that you guys are fighting back to back and not against each other.
Yeah,
right?
on the same team.
You're on the same team. So I wouldn't say there was a ton of those moments, but when those moments did come up, I really enjoyed the ways in which we were able to work through them.
I would agree, because that's just real life, right? Like that not everything is gonna be smooth, and like real life can be great if you are able to embrace that.
Absolutely.
And not expect perfection, not expect, everything to just be like, oh my goodness, like once I get married, everything's gonna be okay, everything's gonna get better. It does get better, and it is really cool, but it's a different type of work that it takes, right? And it's good work. If you're both committed to the same thing, then you have really nothing to worry about because, like you said, you're fighting on the same team. So
absolutely.
yeah, I would agree. That was fun. I like those moments as well. Because it's like builds character, and when your character builds, you just know that you're heading in the right direction.
What's that Bible verse?
We're in Romans 5, verse 3-5, where it says, and not only so, but glory in your sufferings, for suffering produces perseverance, perseverance character, and character hope, and hope does not put us to shame for what Jesus did for us on the cross.
What's Ecclesiastes 1, verse 30?
I
was just testing. I don't even know. I just wanted to see if you can name another verse.
I don't think I could do that one.
Anyway, moving on. Let me now ask you a question for you to answer.
Go for it.
What is the most enjoyable part of our marriage in the last year?
I think it's just seeing each other more and like actually just being together. And our friendship has really grown. I think that just comes with like spending time with one another.
Sure.
And so I've really enjoyed like becoming really good friends with Kev. And not that we weren't good friends before, but it just like there's an intimacy that comes with doing life with someone and trusting someone, and like your whole life is like with them.
Yeah.
Like you're so connected to them, and so that produces like a friendship. And I was not, everyone talks about that, but I wasn't expecting that to be like so cool.
Absolutely. I mean, like I am now dependent on you in my life, and you're dependent in areas, right? Not in every single, but like we have to function as a team.
Yeah.
And usually the better teams are those who are friends from the start.
Friends from the start. Yeah, you got that. So, like you have more, that bond you together.
Absolutely. It's like the 1992 Dream Team. They spent the entire summer getting to know one another more and training together. And then what did they do?
Is that basketball team that went to the Olympics?
Yeah, and then they won the gold medal.
It's
like I've won the gold medal with you.
Oh, that's so sweet. Awesome. I love that.
That's how you pick up a lady, gentlemen.
I won the gold medal with you.
That's how it works, especially with the Paralympian.
Yeah, that's good.
Just slide those in.
Yeah, that's awesome. Very cool. Well, I think like
very cool. That's a transition to be like, Kevin, shut up. Let's move on.
No, I'd never say that. But I think what's been also really cool for us, I lost my train of thought. What I was going to say.
I'm so sorry.
So I think another thing for us that has been really cool is that I have found personally that my relationship with God, when that has been good, our relationship has been better. Like when we're both like pursuing God, or when we're talking like more consistently, like in prayer with Him, I find that our communication is better, which is so interesting.
I mean, I agree. It's like, our marriage, I think on our wedding day, we even talked about like loving God we talked about loving God relentlessly. Like, ours are hard, guys. And the rest will fall into place. And I do believe we saw both sides of that this last year, both when we were pursuing and also maybe when those days or times, periods that we weren't necessarily both in sync with our relationship with the Lord. And it definitely has a toll that you don't necessarily recognize until you look back and be like,
yeah,
whoa.
Well, they all like kind of add up.
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah, it's like what Pastor Chris used to say, like little things become big things over time.
Bars.
Yeah, for real. But it's so true. Like little things add up. It's like even something so simple like the dishes, where it's like a dish just goes in there. That's like one little dish, but by the end of the day, like that's a big pile of dishes. So,
what would you say, or what would you say were like areas in which, like the Lord spoke to you, or like in area, I don't know how to say this, but like in those periods of time where you felt like you were off and you recognized something was off in our relationship, how did you get back on, or what would you do?
I find it's just being like it's having a posture of humility in prayer, and it's like, okay, Lord, like what, point out the things in me that aren't good, and the Bible like tells us to do that, right? Like to come to the Lord and point out every fault in me, or point out everything that is offensive, and I think when we do that, God really meets us generously and in a loving way, and gives us the wisdom and how to respond properly. Or just like makes things not such a big deal, right? And so I think that is always like helpful in any relationship, is to take a moment, take a breather, and be like, oh, hey, like really, what's going on here? Is this just built up in my head, or is this just me? Is this my own stuff? And is this even a big deal?
Absolutely.
Right. So it's having those little check-ins, but it's being humble enough and like having a posture of humility to recognize that, you might be the one that's like a little like it's, is you're the one that's the problem, and you don't need to make a big deal of something, So, anyways, I think anything that marriage has taught us, to wrap this line of conversation up, is that there's always more communication that needs to happen, in so many things. But from more communication comes more growth, comes more unity, comes more love, comes more respect, comes more fun too. Like when you talk about everything, like literally everything, good, the bad, the, stuff that you don't want to admit, more good things come from that as well.
Yeah.
I would say would count.
I would say so. I think effort at the end of the day is number one. And it's important to recognize that you chose this person on the day. So I chose you on August 24th, and you chose me. And really there's no turning back, right? And so I think it's easy on the day to just say the words and go through the motions, but you're making a covenantal relationship with one another.
That's true.
And that's
Choose
something
wisely.
And that's something that can't be broken, or shouldn't be broken. And so carrying that weightiness, and that's a good weightiness to carry in your relationship, that you are ultimately here. I'm ultimately here to make you a better disciple of Christ.
Yeah.
And you're ultimately here to do the same.
Yeah.
And when you take that approach, like unconditional love is what should come out of that. Because you ultimately know how important it is for them to be more like Jesus, and vice versa. So I would say walking in that idea and having that perspective every day, that it's not always easy, right? But like things, like I saw something you posted today on your story, and I thought it was so good. But like I think it was like Levi Lesko.
Oh yeah, talking about picking up your cross
picking
daily.
up your cross and carrying it, right? And like part of your call as a man and a woman who decide to get married is, in a sense, like that's your devotion, not devotion. Is that devotional? No, what's the right word? You're
like, that's your cross, really.
That's your cross, but there was a word that's not devotion. It's
your
No,
Nope.
it's what's the thing called when you? That's your
comment below what you think
not
this
your
word
conviction.
is.
No, it's like when you decide like this is my calling.
My
There's a
word with
TION word, isn't there?
That's my. I don't know.
Oh, guys,
comment below what you think this word is.
I was really going off on something, and I'm gonna get back to it. But I was saying, like you said, that's like your cross to carry. That's
your portion.
No, that's my whatever. That's your calling as a husband.
Yeah.
And so I'm not saying it's like every beautiful thing is still difficult at times.
Yeah.
And that's the same thing with marriage. Like it's beautiful, but it can also be challenging. And I'm sure, I know, don't have to put this in the, I'd lay $100 on the blackjack table if I could make money on this right now. But what I'm saying is, probably shouldn't be talking about gambling. But anyway, what I'm saying is, like, I know we will go through hard times in the future. Sure. And we've had 1 year, and I pray that we have many, many more years to come. And there will be hard moments. But at the end of the day, like, regardless, thick or thin, like, you're my person.
Yeah. Well, and we were just in like Central California for a conference, like a women's retreat called Wonderfully Made, and we got to stay with some really cool friends, Allie and Paul.
You guys are awesome.
They're so awesome. Shout out to them if they're listening. Shout out to them in general.
Yeah, and just shout out to Allie's ministry and that whole organization, Wonderfully Made. It's amazing.
It's so good
what she's doing and they're doing down there. So.
Yeah, exactly. And so, but we were sitting with them today at breakfast, and then they were sharing like some advice, and Paul really like talked about this idea of how like when you get married and then those traditional vows of like in sickness and in health for richer or poorer, like those things actually like really get tested. Like you say those words like when you're feeling all like great, but then sometime down the line, like there is gonna be in sickness and in health, in richer and for poorer, and that comes back to that whole idea of picking up your cross and following Jesus, where it like it does get heavy and it will be hard, but you've committed to that.
Yep.
Right, and as long as you both commit to the same thing, and you check in with one another, and you lift each other up when one person falls, but you're still going in the same direction, it's all gonna work out.
Yep, it is. It's your vocation.
Vocation.
That's the word.
There it is.
I knew it was there somewhere in that mind that forgets a lot of things.
We'll check the comments and see if someone got that word, but
they probably did.
Yeah, we loved our time in California. It was really cool.
Yep.
Just like being around just some really cool people and a really good community, and I think we definitely like left California feeling really restored.
Yeah, absolutely.
And excited just for what God's doing down there, what God's doing through that ministry, and the young girls that were impacted at this retreat. Like that was really cool for us to be a part of. But yeah, no, good advice that we got.
I mean, I think walking out of this weekend and that time and even just this conversation, like I just recognized like the simplicity in what we are called to do, and that's like really to love Jesus and to make disciples.
Yeah.
And I think like we can overcomplicate that super easily. And so for you and I and for people who are in relationships, like that whole mission starts with like loving each other first. Loving each other in private, loving the people that you live with in private. Because like I think when you can master that relationship, you tend to recognize how important like laying down your own self for another individual, and the more you do that for someone, when you are out in the world, you're going to want to do that for others. And so like marriage or the relationship that you're in, like that's the perfect person to first love and do that with. And like it's the same thing. It's like small things. Like the compounding effect of that can lead to and bleed into other areas of your life with other relationships.
Yeah. No, for sure. That's so good.
That was awesome.
That was really awesome.
That was good. So going into this year of marriage, this moment in time, September. Don't know what date, but it's in September.
It's September 15th.
There you go.
Halfway through September already. Crazy.
Wild. But heading into this next year, right now in this, let's just go with right now.
Yeah, year 2. We're in
year two. But right now in year 2, what are you working on that you would like to share personally about what God is doing in your life?
What am I working on?
Maybe not working on, but like, what are you trying to? If we were to look back in this time next year, in our relationship,
okay, no, I
what
got
would you
you.
want?
I'm working on just being confident in who God's calling me to be. I left behind a lot last year, and I'm realizing that I am lacking confidence in where He's leading me. I was really confident in making all those decisions, but now it's standing on my 2 feet and really embracing those things now that stuff is really settling down. So it's honestly my confidence in who God has called me to be, that I'm not the things that I do. I'm not the things that I used to do. I am Dee, but being confident. Yes. But being confident in that.
So like being confident in where you're headed and the decisions that He has for you.
Yeah, and just confident in who He's called me to be, which is child of God. And it just looks like it's just new. So
who happens to speak.
There you go.
Instead of swim.
Yes, that's true. I did.
No, that's awesome. I think that's fantastic.
Thank you. What about you?
I would say not having complete trust in where He's directing us both physically, but also complete trust in where He's directing us with our kind of resources. And so I think it's been easy in areas for me to hold tight onto certain things.
Yeah, okay, yeah.
And so letting that go in regards to control, and also kind of like trusting Him in like resources like finances and things like that.
Yep.
And so I think in our year 2, being more obedient to that, leading our family in that, and also trusting
Love that
where He's directing us. So
that's awesome. There's always things that we can grow in, which is the exciting part about life.
Absolutely.
And always things that God can help us become better in. And when we commit to that, there's always more to experience.
I would agree.
That's awesome.
Cool.
Sweet. Okay, well, guys, we hope you like this little, this has honestly felt like a look into some of our personal conversations between one another. We unpacked a lot. We hope that it encouraged you in some way, maybe gave you some insight into some things. I know that I really enjoyed this conversation, and we just hope that, whatever God's doing in your life, that, you will partner with Him in that you would grow into trust Him in that, and that you would just see His goodness in the different areas of your life.
Absolutely.
Amen.
He's got good things for you, so
He does.
Hold on and trust Him.
Keep trusting. All right, guys. Thanks for listening, and we'll see you again next time on another episode of A Little More Light.
See ya.
Bye.